Okay, so here you can see Alice Wistar married to George L. Herbert, courtesy of NewYorkTimes.com. NewYorkTimes.com slash 1964 slash 03 slash 22 slash archive slash Alice little thingamajig Wistar, little thingamajig married, little thingamajig 2, little George, little thingamajig George, little thingamajig L dash Herbert.html. And you can see here that it says that the bride is a sophomore at Mills. Her father is professor of chemistry and head of Department of Physical Sciences. Mr. Herbert was graduated in 1960 from Harvard College and last year from the Harvard Law School. So that's the father and mother of the two My Red Book Republican felon mob members at George W. Herbert on Twitter, or George W. Herbert, and Richard Lyon Herbert, who's like 6 years older than I am, and so that made him an adult and me a minor quite often. So then here, this is on radaris.com, so radaris.com backslash little wavy line Cliff Liu backslash 12094538863. And as I scroll down here, you'll see his stuff. So he's an attorney, or was an attorney. He went to Stanford Law School, got his Bachelor's of Science from the University of California at Los Angeles. Got his general chemistry bachelor's from UCLA, graduating summa cum laude in 1992. Then he got his PhD in physical chemistry from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. God, I'm really messing up things today. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, otherwise known as MIT. Yeah, so anyway, here's the thing. I actually am very good at chemistry, or I was very good at chemistry in high school, and that was just a fluke. And, you know, I don't think I was any better than anybody else in my class or anything like that, or anything like that. Can I not speak today? So, yeah, I was in chemistry honors, and that was with Joe Guthrie at myredbook.com, Republican, Felonious, Mountain View High School, 94040. And at the end of high school, Joe Guthrie offered to write my recommendation for college as long as I applied to UC Santa Barbara, which is where the cousin of the myredbook.com mob Herbert family got booted out of for selling and using illegal drugs. And that's, I guess, where Joe Guthrie graduated from. I don't know, but, you know, he was like, he told me that I was probably the smartest person that he ever met, and that I was the smartest person at the high school, or, you know, in his classes or whatever, and he didn't know what to do with me. And earlier in my high school career, if you want to call it that, my freshman year in geometry with Kevin McCardle, um, Kevin McCardle called my parents, Stanford grad in 3 years. In math, Greta Torp Watson and Wayne Watson, University of Michigan graduate and author, etc. And Kevin McCardle was like, I think your daughter needs to skip high school and go on to college. And, she could come take trig and whatnot from me at De Anza Junior College in the meantime, because she doesn't belong in high school. And, he came up to me and told me he was going to call my parents at one point. That is Kevin McCardle. And I said, good luck with that. And he did that after, I started like doodling on the desk, like extending out equations because I was bored. And I guess he did contact my parents. And of course, they said no, that I couldn't skip high school because they wanted me to get the social aspect of high school. So, when Kevin McCardle, after he saw what I doodled on the desk, he told me in front of Nicole Reed and her then boyfriend our freshman year that he was going to call my parents. So then I had him for Algebra 2 and part of trig my junior year. And during my sophomore year, Mr. McCardle was like, you're too disruptive, don't come to class. I won't mark you absent. And so oftentimes I wasn't in class, but, because of the period of Algebra 2, there was no real thing where I could go home and come back or, do anything other than like go to the library or sit out in the quad or something. Because by the time I made it home and came back, next period would have rolled around. So with Joe Guthrie, my sophomore year with him with chemistry honors, like I told him, I said, Kevin McCardle, Mr. McCardle, and I have a deal where I don't have to come to class and he won't mark me absent because Joe Guthrie got on me one day in the beginning of the class at the beginning of the year for asking about polarity or something like that when I hadn't even like read the book or opened the book or anything, and I never opened that book ever. He got on me in front of the entire class and he was like, we're not covering that until the end of the year. How dare you take my class off track, so on and so forth. And again, I didn't open the book. I hadn't opened the book. I just ask questions that come to mind, or I used to ask questions that come to mind. Then I realized, after dealing with my dad and him like being like, oh, you're so ADHD with all those questions, like, I've kind of cut down on asking questions. But anyway, so yeah, Joe Guthrie also lived in Point Reyes, Inverness, Marin at some point, just like the myredbook.com Republican felon mob Herbert family. And, he lived, or his dad lived in Saratoga, California, 95030 or 95070, just like the myredbook.com Republican Hess family. And, the only reason I was in the chemistry honors is because, like, over the summer between 8th grade and freshman year of high school, I retook algebra because I felt like I didn't get what I needed in 8th grade in algebra. I felt like, I just didn't have a good enough grasp on it. And I wasn't ordered or anything to retake algebra over the summer. I just decided on my own that I was going to. And so, of course, I got an A during summer school. And then we came into freshman year, the entire freshman class came into freshman year. And one day, I guess it was decided that there was going to be an assessment test, or at least that's what we were told. And so there was this assessment test passed out to the freshman class, and we were told it was just supposed to be a thing to assess where the freshman class was in terms of science and math, or science. And they said that nobody would know the results, and it was just an assessment thing. And so, having just taken algebra for a second time over the summer, that was fresh in my mind. And I actually scored the highest on that assessment test. And the school lied to us, and they came over the, intercom and announced to everybody who the top scorers were on that assessment thing. And like I said, I scored the highest, having just taken algebra again. And then Gina Folks was up there too, and one or two other people. And there was freshman science and freshman science honors, and so I was booted from freshman science to freshman science honors. I wasn't given a choice. And so, yeah, I didn't want to be known as the nerd in freshman science honors. And when I walked in there, the people just gave me these really dirty looks, like Katrina Aker and Elsa Chang and whoever else was in that class. And, I just withered. And, for most of the year, I played stupid, I'll admit that. And, I intentionally failed the tests. And, then Mr. Harding, our freshman science honors teacher, got upset with us and was like, I'm not just going to hand you guys A's anymore. You got to earn it. And at this point, all you guys have F's. And, the only way you're going to get your A back is to, pass this midterm or final. I forget what it was, the midterm or the final. And you have to, use the 5 different types of energy to fill a glass of water in 30 seconds or less. And of course, I didn't want an F on my transcripts. So, I stepped up, and I was put in a group with Stephanie and a guy named Brian. And so, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time thinking about it or anything. And I knew just pretty much right away, how to accomplish this task. And that was to take a piece of wood that's in the shape of a ramp, one of those ramps that you would put a little car on, that you played with when you were a kid or whatever, and that's exactly what we did. So we took a piece of wood, took a little play car, put a rubber band around the piece of wood, put a tack on the end of the car, put a balloon on a pole that was filled with water, took the car, used the rubber band and the little ramp thing, took the car with the tack on it, and aimed it at the water balloon, and put a cup underneath the water balloon, and bingo, task accomplished. And I came up with that, and again, I just didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it or thinking about it. And so we were the only group to get an A on that and to pass the midterm or the final the first time around. And so Mr. Harding comes up to our group at one point, and he's like, so who wants to explain this? And Stephanie and Brian had no clue. So I had to explain the whole thing and how the 5 different types of energy worked in that case, in that scenario. And so Mr. Harding just got so angry with me after I explained that. And he was like, I thought it was a fluke that you got the highest, score on that assessment exam or whatever. And you were just playing dumb. And how dare you? And he got so upset with me and so angry at me. And like, so then as punishment, I had to teach the class about the 5 different types of energy. I had to get up in front of the entire class and spend a class period teaching them about the 5 different types of energy so they could pass the midterm or the final. And it took me like all of like 5 or 10 minutes. I didn't even have to like use the entire class period to explain that and to get everybody to understand the 5 different types of energy. And, just to slow things down, to add a little dimension to it, like I did everything with my left hand because, like, technically I'm ambidextrous. Like when I was a kid, I used to write one letter with my left hand of my name, then the next letter with my right, then the next letter with my left. And I did that writing period. Like I'd switch hands every other letter for every word, for everything I wrote. And like, I played tennis when I was younger. So like I, had the whole ambidextrous thing going on there. And at one point my mom and my tennis teacher ganged up on me and said, you have to choose how you're going to do this, your forehand and your backhand and stuff like that. And, if you're going to have a one-hand forehand, a one-hand backhand, two-hand backhand, whatever. And that's on video somewhere. So anyway, I ended up pissing Mr. Harding off, and then I got, tossed into chemistry honors, like just, that's how things work. And, I still remember a lot of that stuff, like triple bonds, and, you need 2 O's on one side and 2 O's on the other side, and, about how the whole, when electrons move further out or when they, move further in, like how they either lose or gain energy, and like it's not what you would expect. And I remember like my bases and acids, and I remember Lewis dot structures and all that good stuff. So it's obvious that, Joe Guthrie knew both the myredbook.com Republican mob Herbert family and the myredbook.com Republican felon Hess family. And I was supposed to go to Mills, I guess, when it was a women's college, and get my, bachelor's and master's and PhD in chemistry. And, when I met Alice Herbert, schizophrenic, gun-toting, illegally deputized Alice Herbert, in the beginning, I remember her mentioning that her dad was a chemistry professor or whatever, but I don't think she ever told me that it was at Mills, which used to be a women's college. And she was just such an oddball, and just that whole family, total felons and mob members, and like just total criminals. And like I just was like, I don't want anything to do with this, and I just had a bad feeling. And I think they pretty much were going to make me into some kind of like illegal drug manufacturer. I think that's like what was going to happen. Anyway, so Cliff Liu, living at 666 Fairlane Avenue next to these ex-mafia members, that's no coincidence. That's definitely not a coincidence. And, I'm sure he can make things like anthrax and, Rohypnol and stuff like that. And I'm sure, if I spent enough time looking into it, so could I. But would I? No. I have no interest. Him, on the other hand, I think he'd do it in a heartbeat. I think Cliff Liu would do stuff like that in a heartbeat. Because obviously he's about money. And he's about, how he appears to other people. Like, what other people think of him matters a lot to him. And I kind of subscribe to the other idea, which is, what do you care what other people think? Like the title, The Feynman Book. I kind of subscribe to that idea. Like when Feynman's wife was sick, and like he took her out to the garden area or whatever, and he said to her, really, what do you care what other people think? That's kind of the way I live my life, I guess. Like, I just don't believe in putting on airs. And I don't think I'm better than everybody else. And I don't think I need to prove that I'm better than anybody else. And I don't think that that's the way you should live your life. I don't think you should live your life trying to